Welcome to Talking Voiceovers. Our guest today is Moleboheng Sehume. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It should be fun.
It's great to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
I'm a producer and I started off in radio many, many moons ago at Prime Media in Cape Town with KFM and Cape Talk. Back then, the stations had big station promotions, 4 big station promotions. So I would have to produce things like the sound of the station with Cape Town. I don't know if you remember it. We had a big one at the end of the year, Christmas Wish, takes the life out of you. We had small business awards, I think then with Nedbank. So yeah, that's how I cracked my teeth, let's say, and really got into the meat of what radio production and what production is all about. Currently, I train quite a lot of VOs, voiceovers. Yeah, in the recent space, like in about 3 years, a lot of people have been wanting to get into the space. And it's a difficult space to get into, I must say, because there are already so many established voices. But I still believe that there's space for new voices. As I always say, hashtag open up the industry. There's definitely new space for new voices.
Definitely. So, without going into your whole course material, if you had one piece of advice for someone who's looking at entering the voiceover industry in South Africa, what would that be?
Yeah. Be yourself, because you really, as client, go for a person who's themselves, because you can hear it. There's nothing worse than a voice that's trying to be somebody else. Watch yourself, have your water, clear your palate so you clear your audible. If you're starting out, I would definitely say find yourself an agent. I mean, if you go on Google and you just say top 10 agencies in Joburg, where I'm based, you definitely get the most popular ones. And these are the ones that most of the agencies give the briefs to. And depending on how great your voice is, that's definitely the first way to go. And what's great about somebody who's entering first and using an agency is that, one, you get to understand the industry better because the agency kind of holds your hand. Secondly, things like payments and your tax, it's easier when there's somebody who's been in the game long enough to assist you with that. So I'd say the first step is get a reputable agent to assist you. I mean, you're allowed also as an up and coming artist to quiz the person who's going to be representing you. So you can ask for previous works online. When you go and you research them, you can see other voiceover artists that are currently on their books. So you kind of like have a sense of, oh, this person, I've heard their voice. So there's a form of trust, if I can call it that.
Would agents take brand new voiceover artists that have no experience? I was under the impression that you needed to be experienced.
That's why I'm saying it's very difficult to get into, but I think your safest bet at this point in time, because they understand the game, because also it's such a quick turnaround. An agency can get a brief from client and literally need to turn it around within 48 hours. Now, if you're an independent artist, you have to struggle with finding a studio to record, paying the studio. If it's a home setup, the quality of the audio that you're going to record is a big thing. If you're going to go to a person who maybe has a small studio, the quality of the engineer putting that material together. So I think it's a little bit more difficult if you're going to go independent as opposed to calling an agent. And honestly, it's the good old-fashioned call, email. I hate to use the word hound, but if you really want to get in, that's practically what you're going to have to do. And if your voice is really that beautiful, clear, crisp, you'll win.
Okay, but it's not only about having a good voice. You need to have coaching as well, wouldn't you say?
I would definitely say that. And I think the first step before even coaching is that you have to read everything you come across, whether you're at the dentist, I don't know, waiting for the dentist. If there's a little pamphlet there, read it, because then you get to see how words are crafted. Because when you're coming into studio for a 30-second commercial, we don't have time to still be telling you how to pronounce certain names. We understand that as a professional, you know how to deliver. So I'll definitely start off by saying read. and something really, I don't know, a lot of people find it a bit stupid, but read out aloud, because that's what you're going to have to do when you get into the booth. Read out aloud to yourself. If you've got kids, there's a lot of time now during COVID. Read them those beautiful kiddie stories, because those stories have great pronunciation guides, alliteration guides, and range and tonality, because you kind of like have to play out the part. So I definitely recommend that reading is the first thing that you should do, so that you don't jam when you get into the booth, because say what you will, sometimes you just get stage fright and it's like you can't perform. you know.
So then, the opposite question: what would you say not to do? What do you recommend not to do to a new voiceover artist?
Yeah, because it's also, like we were saying, so difficult to get listed on with an agent, because most of the voices that are used seem to always be used. No other way to say it, but don't be arrogant. You can have a great voice and then you get there and then you think you've got the best voice. No, there's a whole list of people behind you who've got great voices and who have pedigree in doing this. So that's the first thing I'd say. Definitely humble yourself. Obviously, don't come into the studio a little bit hazy, inebriated, all of those things. Even if you know the client, when you've gotten this first big role, because we work in these industries and they're quite close knit, don't be too friendly with the client. Get in, do your take, and get on. I found that when you have fizzy drinks,
Yeah.
you can't measure when you're going to burp and you don't know when you're going to burp. So I would definitely say stay away from fizzy drinks, and maybe have before you do a voice, still water, because it does cleanse your palate. I would also avoid things like chocolate and coffee, because they do kind of leave like phlegmy bits to your voice. Absolutely. Keep hydrated, clear your throat, do a little, you know what I mean? Play with your vocal cords. And one thing that I hear a lot of voice artists always say works is a hot shower in the morning. And you kind of hum and warm up your vocal cords. That steam apparently with what's this, the shower
So
assists.
literally warming up physically.
Absolutely. Literally warming up, like a hot warm mug with some lemon in it is, apart from COVID, it's a great way to just cleanse your palate.
That's true. Yeah. So now here's a tricky question. What are the different payment structures with regard to PMA rates? Because nobody seems to understand PMA. Do you have any clarifications?
All right. No, I do not. Let me put that out there. But the first thing that I would say is, as a budding artist wanting to, you can go online and, you can download it as a PDF. It gives you a rough estimate in terms of what to expect for a normal voiceover rate. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that it outlines, if maybe you come in and you don't do so well, what the cancellation fee is, what the rate is for voiceovers, for audiobooks, for movies and commercials, and for gaming as well. It also outlines what you will be paid thereafter, i.e., if you've done a voice today and the usage period is for 3 months, you should be getting paid for that 3 months that the ad is on air, or that the ad on, say, one of our paid channels is on air. So you need to understand that. And this is the reason also, Gail, I say that it's critical that new guys are under a well-established agency, because I can say here safely that 870 is the standard fee. Okay, so you go in and you know that that's the standard that you're going to get for a 30-second commercial. However, with an agency, you will be able to know, because your script will say, let me say, female voiceover, and you do your lines. There's a separate fee on the same script if you're a female voiceover and an announcer. So those are the little things that you need to be aware of as a VO artist. Hence me just punting the fact that you really need somebody who has been doing this for a long time, who has been putting together invoices for a long time, and they look after you. It's in their best interest and in your best interest. And like you say, it's quite a muddy, for lack of a better English term, payment structure. But this is what we have to work with, unfortunately.
So you wouldn't recommend going independent, starting out with online, anything like that. You'd say go for an agent.
I know that what I'm saying is a bit of an oxymoron, i.e., hashtag open up the industry. Because we know that there are things like favoritism. We know that with established artists, what clients love about them is that they one take wonders. They walk into the studio and boom, you would have allocated 30 minutes for them, 40 minutes for them. And within like 10 minutes, you're like, okay, just give us a second and third take for boo and giggles. The infrastructure also of where you're going to record is going to cost you money. Because if you're going to come to, say, an independent person with their own booth, they're going to charge you an engineering fee. They're going to charge you an hour of studio time, depending on how long you take. They're going to charge you for final mix and editing. I feel that the costs are a little bit more involved versus you just walking into a booth with your script, shutting it down, and making sure that your agents work you out.
That makes sense, yeah. So you say you give coaching for new voiceovers. Tell us a little bit about that and how people can reach you.
Okay, so that, and thank you also, because since I reached out to you on Facebook, I've been getting quite, a lot of requests. And
Good.
as I say, it's quite interesting to hear, because people really we have a wealth of talent in South Africa. And that's where, Gail, I would say budding artists can perhaps spend a little bit of money. Because in that instance, then you can find somebody with a studio and record a demo. And once you've recorded the demo, then I can even give you tips to say, edit it in this way, enunciate, I beg your pardon, in this particular way, pronounce this in this particular way, so that when you send that demo off to agency, you stand a better chance in line. But from my end, in my services, I do studios in Craig. And what we do is it's a dual course where over 3 days, we just give you the basics and a context of voice work, where it comes from, because voice work is everywhere. TV, radio, we now have podcasts, which is just, a whole new thing that's just, gone crazy. So you kind of need to get a context in terms of the lay of the land, if I can call it that. So we do that. And I also try my level best to invite in established artists who they can also give sound advice to say, hey man, when I was starting out, these are the tips. Also, even currently, these are the tips that, and interlinked then with the theory, if I can call it theory, is obviously you go into the booth, and we work on your voice, clarity, tone, pace. How do you pronounce certain things? It is in everybody's best interest to actually have a bit of knowledge in terms of what a sound engineer does, apart from the booth, what exactly each button means, so that eventually when you are established and you have this agency and you've got a rapport and you see that you've got a bit of work coming in, a lot of artists now really do record from home, established artists, that is.
Especially with COVID these days.
Yeah. You walk into studio, there's a whole lot of spraying that we need to do. There's a mic and the covering of the mic. You really get up and close with that. And you can't voice with a mask on. We really need to, hear your voice. But as I said, start out with an agency.
And I suppose everybody's got a different opinion as well as to what's the best way of doing it. So any aspiring new voiceovers should really do their research and decide on which way they'd rather go. Contact as many people and coaches as they can.
Absolutely. And I would also say, if you go online and you look at who they're representing and you're like, oh, these guys are big names, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying limit yourself here. These guys are big names. They've got all the big hitters. You got to use a little bit of logic here. You know what I mean? 9 times out of 10, that's what client is going to go with. But if you do your research and you're like, okay, number 5, 6, 7, maybe even number 8, they kind of like have artists similar to me that are young, budding, coming up. Maybe I should try them. So if you have a relationship, for example, with the executive creative director, because they make the final call in terms of the voice selections that they want. The four are going to go to established artists. This one, I can try out somebody new, somebody up and coming.
So tell us how you got there. What's your story?
So it was a lot of meandering. I really fell into radio by accident. I was still living in Cape Town then, and I worked for Prime Media Broadcasting. In Cape Town, they have KFM and Cape Talk. And they still had 4 big station promotions. So I would have to produce these, put the instruction sheets together, put the promos together, promos, i.e., the things that you hear that the campaign is about. And that's where I really, really learned that production elements include things like promo, top and tail, you know what I mean?
Explain top
all
and
of that.
tail.
So a top and tail, for example, if a client is buying a number of promos and they're buying a top and tail and they're sponsoring, say, the traffic show, at the beginning of the traffic show, you will hear, oh, this traffic report is brought to you by XYZ, whoever the name of the brand is.
Right, of course.
And then you hear the traffic report, and at the end of it, that traffic report was brought to you by XYZ, the brand. So there was that for 2 radio stations, the then Highveld, yes, that's how old I am, and 702. And then moved out to Joburg and worked with a great team at TEDx Soweto and TEDx Johannesburg as production manager. So that was also interesting because we'd have to work with different venues, whether it was a theater, whether it's we decided that that's the best theater to host the amount of people that we required. A huge part of it, apart from the logistics of it, would be sitting in with the ECD and listening in on the rehearsals, because with TED, you can't have cards that have you ready and you reading out. You kind of like have to memorize your entire 15 minutes to this thing and be able to go, because also we broadcasted live internationally. There really is no time. So if we say that Gail is speaking at 11 until 11:15, you got to get your ducks in a row. So listening in on that also just honed in my skills on listening in on what the ECD would say to somebody who's nervous, to say, don't be nervous. If you are a very anxious kind of person, perhaps just look at one person in the audience and focus on them. How do you pronounce certain things? Because some of the guests that we'd invite have got very thick accents. Some of them are academics and they don't have to do this for a living. So they kind of write what they want, to be pronounced. So there was a lot of that. And that was a fun process, still is, still working with them. And after leaving them, went through to Power FM as a breakfast show host, just when they were starting out with the legendary Tim Modise. That was fun. Unbearable, that 3 a.m. waking up cold time. Try that in winter. Yeah.
No, that's not fun in winter.
Exactly. And people kind of like think, this thing you put together and it's easy, because they switch on the radio at 6 o'clock and they're like, oh, but it's not 4 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot of churning, there's a lot of confirm, there's a lot of waking up people and pissing them off. Hi, don't forget, we're going to speak to you at 6:30. But even there, there's a lot of production elements, because you have to work quite closely with your engineer. Everybody knows that after each show, there would be show promos that go out.
Mm-hmm.
So you not only listen in on the conversation and drive the actual show with the talent, but you also have to pick up on, after those 3 hours, what is a great showpiece moment to advertise your show throughout the day, essentially,
Right.
I moved on to being program manager at both Power FM and at 702. And a lot of that work really also has to you having to give feedback to the talent. So you need to listen to the show and sit after every show with the producers to say, I think you could have crafted it in that manner. To say to the talent, I think when you are, being emphatic and you really are putting your point across, without any editorial interference I need to add. This is how I feel that, you could deliver this better. So your ears have to be a bit supersonic, because you need to pick up on little things, little nuances that a person in their car wouldn't hear, a person sitting at home wouldn't hear. I mean, to date, when I listen to radio, nobody who's with me ever wants to sit with me because they're like, oh my God, we don't want to know that there's a problem. You can hear there's a problem. Just leave it, keep it moving. So the coaching element, I think, has always been there based on that. It's been about, I think, two and a half odd years now doing coaching. And once again, thank you for your Facebook shout out, because it's gotten quite a lot of new voices wanting to work with me. And it's tough, obviously, based on what we are currently experiencing in the pandemic, but it's also quite rewarding to work with new talent that wants to literally get into the building, if I can call it that.
And do you think there's going to be enough opportunities for all those new people who want to come in?
It's a difficult question that you're asking me, Gail. But I think COVID is going to give opportunity for us to tweak the radio clock a bit, allowing for opportunities. And I also think that with great innovations such as podcast, there's a whole new world with podcast. And I also feel that there are things like audiobooks. Not everybody wants to sit and read. Audiobooks are also just kicking off in South Africa in terms of new voices that can enter the market.
So there's definitely something for everyone if you put in the hard work.
I think absolutely. If you put in the hard work and are optimistic, and as I say, you really love this and you listen to what your coach says, the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit, really.
Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for your advice.
Thank you.
It was awesome meeting you,
Yeah.
Moleboheng. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
All right. Great stuff. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.